Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you're all doing great, as I always say. And in this video, we got a bunch of stories. We got stories from Romania, some from the Rockefeller Estate in North Carolina, some from Cairo, Georgia. We have a story about Ozzy Osbourne and Robert Trujillo, which is pretty wild. So, if all that and more sounds like your cup of tea, then definitely pull up a stump with me, and let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So, I'm a hunter, and I have been out quite a few times, but, I'm not perfect. Nobody is. So this one time I was hunting out in the woods, and it was a new place, so I get super lost, and you can call me stupid if I want to. But I'm basically wandering around, trying to find the road so I can find my truck, and nightfall is approaching rapidly. And I eventually find this cabin, and I knock, and no one comes to the door. So I try the door, and the door opens. It's a very quaint place. I figure that since there's nobody here, that maybe I can just sleep for a little while, and I'll leave a note in the morning with an explanation and a thank you. So I stumble into the cabin, and I fall onto the couch, and I'm so exhausted and so anxious that I nearly fall asleep instantly. Before I do, I notice this weird portrait on the wall. It's certainly creepy, but not terribly so. It appears to be staring at me like those pictures that kind of follow you with their eyes. But I'm too tired to really worry about it, so I fall asleep, and I catch some Z's. When I wake up, I make the place look tidy and as if I had never been there. I pack my belongings, and I'm writing the note. But then I notice something. There's no portraits on the wall. Where I saw the person looking was a window. So this one time, when I was a kid, I had this really severe case of pneumonia. I lived in a third world country, very poor nation, so healthcare obviously wasn't the best. I was super sick, and I had a really high fever. I pass out in the early evening when the sun is still up. I dream that I'm walking in the forest behind my school. All my classmates are just screwing around, doing various things, I guess just kid stuff. My childhood crush is holding my hand as we walk down this path. It's a super innocent and cute dream. My friend Sydney suddenly runs in front of us and jumps into a puddle. The second her boots hit the surface of the water, I am ripped from this dream by a huge clap of thunder. I am instantly wide awake, but I can't move. And I think, what the hell's going on? And there's someone there. I can hear them breathing. Lightning flashes and I can see them. Something strokes the side of my face. I can't scream. It has long and sharp nails and clammy skin. It leans down and whispers in my ear, "Yes, yes." It hisses the words out. It's an old woman. It's a witch. I manage to pry my mouth open and scream my lungs out. My mom runs upstairs, but the witch is gone. It turns out that this woman had been going around and somehow making kids sick. I don't know what the hell she wanted with me, but it traumatized me. There may undoubtedly be an explanation for all of this, but it still scares the hell out of me. So I was over at a friend's house for a sleepover in the early 2000s. And by early 2000s, I mean like dial-up was still the best thing and brand new and stuff. We stay up late, screwing around in these old AOL chat rooms talking to really weird people or whatever. I can't exactly remember. One night, we're doing that and we get tired and decide to call it a night. Her guest room is the one with the computer, so we use that bed. I have this really terrible phobia of the dark, so we sleep with some lights on. I'm still really freaked out though. I don't like sleeping anywhere other than my home. I'm lying awake, subtly panicking until past midnight. I finally start to get tired and I start to fall asleep. I'm in that weird space between being totally asleep and being sort of awake. I'm vaguely aware that the computer is making some kind of ticking sound or whatever. It isn't enough to really wake me up. And then, out of nowhere, the dial-up tone starts, but it's like 5 times as loud as it should be. I'm instantly, fully awake, but I'm paralyzed with fear. This was not sleep paralysis. I was actually awake. I could look around and everything. The tone goes on for what seems like forever, but my friend is somehow still asleep, even though I'm trying to wake her up. Then suddenly, the door to the bathroom opens, just slightly, and I see it in my peripheral vision, and then I turn my head and glance over. Someone is in the bathroom. No, something is. It's got this impossibly long arm, like if you bent a pipe cleaner to look like a creepy arm. It has no real form, it's just thin and bent in all the wrong places. It's stretching from the bathroom to the light switch on the wall, and just as it's about to flick the switch to turn it off, I manage to scream. My friend wakes up, and it's gone so fast I can't even process it. She heard nothing and saw nothing. The next morning, we looked at the wall, and there was indeed a weird smudge on the wallpaper, which had never been there before. Her mother was rich and had really nice wallpaper and stuff and was pretty obsessive about keeping it clean. So my friend believes me. I don't know how the two events are connected, but I was too freaked out to ever stay over there again. So I've had a couple of weird things happen to me. Now, I don't remember this personally, but my parents told me this. When I was 5, we moved into this new house, and it was just a regular suburban house. But for some reason, I started to get nosebleeds every night. I'd wake up, and blood was all over my pillow and pajamas. I felt physically fine. I never woke up during them. There was no illness or injury. My parents took me to a doctor, and even they couldn't find a single thing wrong. This happens every night for close to a week. Eventually, my stepdad finds a little statue hidden behind a curtain. It must have been left behind by the previous occupants. I can't remember what it looked like, but it was about 3 inches tall and was dark brown or black from what he told me. They threw away the statue, and the nosebleed stopped. To this day, they have no idea if it was just a coincidence or if there was something evil or something cursed about the statue. So this happened a little while ago. I live in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and my friends were telling me about this creepy and abandoned Rockefeller Estate. They say they've been there several times, and each time, strange things happen, and then they leave. Rocks being thrown at them or near them, etc. So, this time we decided to go in my truck, and I drive. The path there is off the highway and requires an off-road capable vehicle. My Tacoma makes it through with slight difficulty. It's dark as hell, and we begin walking around and exploring the old buildings. It's nothing too insane, it's just some collapsed buildings and asbestos-lined basements and stuff of buildings that used to be there. The whole compound is a circle, and you can just follow the trail and you will end where you started. With this in mind, we parked the truck on the exit road facing back to the highway. So we're quick to notice that as we leave the field and get deeper into the woods, the trail is different somehow. We decide to keep going until the trail takes us to an old bridge over a rapid stream. And all of us are like, there was no bridge or stream when we first come down this road. So at this point I'm checking Google Maps, and it tells us that we're on the highway. We cross this bridge on foot, and we find a house on the other side. The stream split there, and you could only cross by a large fallen tree. We climb across one at a time, using our phones to illuminate the log. Once we're all across and standing on the island thing, we continue to the other side of the house. We see that the tree, or a tree, had fallen and collapsed the roof and some of the walls, exposing the basement, which was nothing but a pitch-black hole in the middle of the house. There was no stairs and no ladder. I throw a rock to see how far it goes down. We wait about a minute, and there's no sound. We're all thoroughly spooked by this Blair Witch type stuff that's going on here with the endless basement. We continue down the side of the house, and we find a dam, and we realize that this stream was running through the dam, and on the other side is a large lake that we didn't know was there, and it wasn't on Google Maps either. By this time, we all felt like there was something near us and watching, something that we couldn't see. On the far end of the dam, there was a trail that went deeper into the woods, but something was off about it. Looking down into it, even with the flashlight, it was too dark. It's like the flashlights didn't do anything. It was darker than the basements that we had crawled down into. We say, yeah, okay, we're not going any further, screw that. And we get back in the truck, and we throw it in reverse. We're going to try to get back to the highway. We make it back to the clearing in front of the compound, and we decide to try that trail in front of us again. It's either that, or go back into the compound that is fenced in with zero way out. I throw the truck in four-wheel drive and pray that nothing happens this time. And this time, the weirdest thing happened. The trail was like it was when we arrived, and we made it to the highway. Looking back in the rearview mirror, I see this weird light floating in the darkness of the trail before disappearing. It was almost like a portal. There were rumors of weird occult stuff surrounding that property. My friend mentioned child sacrifice and a random obelisk found in the ruins of one of the buildings. There was weird glyphs painted on it, and these glyphs could be found on the insides of some of the buildings too. Some of them had random rooms with no windows and heavy doors, with one handle lock on the outside. The whole place is just really creepy, and you shouldn't go there. So this next story is a little more different than the other ones in this video, and the reason for that is usually I find these stories or they're sent in to me. This one is from a celebrity, like a music celebrity. He didn't send it to me, obviously. I just found it on a music website that I go to called ultimateguitar.com. So there will be a link to this article in the description. The actual interview is through Revolver, but I found it here, so I'll just link this article. So it centers around Robert Trujillo of Metallica and Ozzy Osbourne, who has a new album out now, if you didn't know. It's called Patient Number 9, and it's a pretty damn good album. But Robert Trujillo used to play for Ozzy Osbourne on bass. He plays for Metallica now on bass, obviously, but he played for Ozzy Osbourne. He played for a band called Suicidal Tendencies, a band called Infectious Grooves, and probably another one that I'm forgetting. So he said that the first gig that he played with Ozzy on tour, he was still in Infectious Grooves, and Ozzy was the headlining act. And he said that the first time he was ever on tour with Ozzy, they had a bit of a cursed first show. So during this time, it was 1991, so Ozzy would have been putting out Touring On, or had just put out No More Tears. And Robert Trujillo was with Infectious Grooves, and they were working on their debut album, The Plague That Makes Your Booty Move. And of course, they had been recording in the same studio as Ozzy was recording No More Tears in. So this obviously led to the two bands talking, and they hit it off pretty well just right out the bat. So this led to Infectious Grooves opening for Ozzy Osbourne shows. And obviously, you know, Ozzy has a lot of history with crazy stuff happening. So this is a quote from Robert Trujillo. There's kind of a crazy story that happened in Austin, Texas, when Infectious Grooves first opened for Ozzy. It was a theater in Austin. We were all really excited. We had done a warm-up show just before that in Houston, and now we're pulling up to the back of the venue in Austin. And the first thing we see when we get off the tour bus is a pentagram on the ground, and a dead raven, and black roses and candles. And we're like, oh my god, it's like, welcome to the tour. We're literally like, what are we getting ourselves into? So obviously, already right now, there's some crazy stuff going on. So Robert Trujillo was talking about how their part of the gig went fine. Everybody loved it, or as much as you could in an Ozzy show when the crowd wants Ozzy, but you still have to support the opening acts. So again, he says, the actual show itself was interesting because we hadn't learned how to pace our set yet, and with Ozzy, similar to most well-known metal bands, the crowd started chanting the name Ozzy, Ozzy, and they didn't know who the hell we were. They didn't know who Infectious Grooves were. So they're chanting, and the balcony was literally moving, but we knew that once we got into our songs, we could maybe divert just a little bit of energy and that attention. So the whole thing was kind of edgy, from the pentagram to the show itself to the energy in the crowd, and we're just like, oh my god, we survived. But then something crazy happened. And then the topper was, Ozzy's playing, and we're all excited. I think it was myself and two of the band members. We had had a beer and were creeping around backstage as Ozzy's playing and it's dark. And didn't I end up tripping over a pile of cables, and I fell into the connectors for the monitors, the power lines and everything, and I knocked out the power to the monitor system. It was like slow motion. I see myself falling, and I'm knocking out like 3 of the input jacks, and all of a sudden the power's out, on stage. All you hear is Ozzy and the drums, acoustically. Ozzy looked over, everybody looked over, and no one knew what happened. I was so scared. Luckily, the monitor guy saw what happened, and he was able to patch it back in a matter of seconds. And I was like, oh man, we're definitely off the tour. We're definitely going home. So I went to catering, and I was just trying to play it off, like, maybe nobody noticed. And Ozzy's tour manager came up behind me, and he was really nice about it, luckily. He put his arm around me and said, Robert, did you knock out the power to the monitor rig? And I said, yeah. And he goes, okay, don't do that again, please. And I go, are we going home? Are we off the tour? And he goes, no, just don't do it again. You're lucky. Ozzy thinks that there was a power outage in Austin. And I just remembered that because between the pentagram and it being our introduction to the crowd in a small venue and me knocking out the monitor rig, it was a cursed first gig. Welcome to the world of Ozzy Osbourne. So I thought that story definitely fit with the channel, and I love Metallica and Ozzy Osbourne and all those bands like that, so it really fit with me, and I'm even excited right now just to talk about it. So it was cool, and I hope you enjoyed this little segment. Is anyone else from Cairo, Georgia? If so, tell me if you remember this, or if you saw it. And this story is from 2007, by the way. I woke up in the middle of the night, about 2 weeks ago. It sounded like a freight train is about to crash through our house. I tactically almost messed my pants and get under my bed. I don't know why I did this, but it seemed right. Whatever this noise is, it's like a tornado, but 50 times louder. It's strong enough to rattle the windows, but nothing is shaking, so it's not an earthquake. I yell for my dad, but I don't hear him. I figure at this point that whatever it is will either kill me or eventually go away. Suddenly, there's this bright flash that turns the whole room white. I hold up my hand in front of my face, and I realize that I can see the bones in my hand. I can literally see right through my skin. That's how bright this is. I think we must have been attacked. This must be a nuke. This is the end, I think. And then, instantly, it all stops. It's totally quiet, except for a couple of car alarms that are going off down the street. I go and get my dad, and he's totally asleep. He didn't hear or see anything. I look outside, and there's no people or anything. There's no downed power lines or wrecked vehicles or anything. It's just normal besides the car alarms. But there's this weird smell to the air. It's like ozone, and it's everywhere. The next day at school, no one knows what I'm talking about. Over the next few weeks, a ton of local animals go missing. We even lost one of our dogs who had always been 100% loyal. He was just taken from the backyard. But eventually, that stops too. Seriously though, did anyone hear it? Or am I just completely crazy? Three years ago, my wife and I went for a one-day hike in the woods near my native town. It's a small mountain town in Romania, the kind that you walk in one direction for about 10 minutes and you're in the woods. We took the course of a small river and followed it deep into the forest. I've never been in that area before, but I know the place like the back of my hand, and I can orient really well as it is part of my job. We were walking for about 4 hours, and my friends were starting to get tired, so we decided to take a small break. It was in this heavily wooded area before we would hike up a hill and get to a nearby village. As we were having a quick snack, they both started looking really pale and scared. My wife and I asked them, "What's the matter?" And they pointed to some trees and said, "Can't you see those women in white looking straight at us?" As soon as we turned to look, they said, "They're running into the forest, can't you see them?" We all started running to the place that they showed us to see if there was anybody there, but there wasn't. We went back to our hike and went back home. My friends were obviously very disturbed by the fact that only they could see the women in white. So fast forward to 2 weeks later. We were having a barbecue for one of those friends' birthday, and we started talking about planning another hike, And then they started joking, saying not to go toward the same place or even through the area. One of our friends has a girlfriend that's really into folklore and the supernatural and overheard our story. She told us that they saw a forest nymph. We call them Aile in our culture. She said that only men could see Aile. They were like mermaids. They lure you deep into the forest and then feed on you. Hearing this, I asked, well, if only men can see them, then why didn't I see them? Immediately, she pointed at my wedding band and said, "You are already taken. They do not appear for married men, as they are not free for the taking." So, what'd you think of all those stories? Let me know down in the comments. Do you have a story of your own that you'd like to see read on the channel? I have an email down below that you can send them to. And if you want to, there's also a Patreon and a PayPal down there. Right now, the main perk of being a patron is that you get the video a little bit before it goes live on YouTube. That's pretty much all I can really do with that right now. But anyways, if that sounds like something you'd be into, the links are down there in the description. If not, that's okay too. I appreciate you viewing the video. Anyways, with that, I think I will see you in the next one, which will be on Sunday. I don't have a calendar in front of me, so I don't know exactly the day. But yeah, I will see you in the next one. Thank you for pulling up a stump, and thank you all for joining me.